I can eat.
Call the Carl Village Council meeting to order. Would everyone please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Lamb?
Present.
Mr. Jewett?
Present.
Mr. Bicknell?
Here.
Mr. McIntosh?
Here.
Ms. Tankersley?
Here.
Mr. Humphries?
Here.
Mayor Winkler?
Here. We have a motion to suspend the reading of the minutes by the clerk.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Before you are the minutes of our regular meeting of November 27th. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Regular meeting minutes of November 27th have been adopted. Next on our agenda is our public forum. Is there anyone in the audience this evening who would like to address council? If so, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jesse Gwynn. I live at 190 Earnhardt. So I just have some questions. I've lived here for probably going on 5 years now. So one of the concerns I have is we roughly are a village or municipality of 5,000 people roughly. The median household income, according to the census, is about 34,000 people. So that's roughly about, if you take it in half, is 2,500 people that probably pay on average of $465 a year in city taxes. So that's roughly about $1.1 million a year. I'd like to know where our tax money's going. Central Street out here, nicely paved. It looks wonderful. The Platte looks horrible. There's patches here and there that are fixed. My road looks horrible. We have no fire hydrants except for on Eagle Ridge, $400,000 homes, which I get. We're on wells, so you can't have fire hydrants in well areas. I get that. I'm a retired firefighter of 18 years in Clark County. That's a big concern to me. For every minute that a fire's left unattended, it grows 3 times its size. While you can't have fire hydrants, I know we get those, I think, are supplied by the city of Franklin. Why haven't we put in tanks underground to feed fire hydrants in strategic areas? Not only does it raise the homeowners, either renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance, how long does it take the fire department to get there? I can tell you over the summer I had a medical emergency. It took them 15 minutes to get there. If I wasn't a retired EMT, I probably would have died because I got stung by a bee. Both of our, Franklin Township I think is one out there on Marks Pullen Road, the other being out here past the ballpark. They're both on the same side of the railroad tracks. Every once in a while the train stops. It's hard telling how long it's going to be there. So which means it delays emergency traffic for fire engines, ambulances. That's a big concern for me, as it should be for anybody that lives in the city or even in Franklin Township. What's being done about that?
Well, we can't do anything about the railroad,
Which
as far as that goes.
I know that that's nothing that you can be, but
And the fire department you're speaking of over there belongs to the township.
what about City of Carlisle Fire Department?
Our fire department sits between the tracks.
Okay.
Typically, trains don't stop there for periods of time like they do down by the other fire department, but occasionally they do stop. It's something we've dealt with for many, many years. Our fire department's all volunteer. We have a joint service with gyms with Franklin Township as far as EMS. Those ambulances are stationed, I think, one over here by the
On Marks
facility.
Pullen?
Marks Pullen you're speaking of. There's one in Hunter and there's one in Franklin. And, they staff accordingly to what they can afford. You know, we have options as far as fire departments goes. If the citizens would want us to take a look at it, I'm sure it would be a lot more expensive than what we're having now. But I do understand your concerns.
Yeah, because what happens if my house catches fire?
Well, everyone uses mutual aid,
Okay.
as you well know.
Do you know how long it takes to set up a dump tank operation?
I'm not familiar with all of that.
On an average, a good day, probably 10 minutes. So what that is usually you use some kind of tubular frame with, we'll call it a tarp.
Okay, I understand. I've seen those.
Okay. And then you fill it with water, and they siphon the water out of that. Your average fire engine carries about 1,000 gallons of water. Your average engine pumps 350 gallons per minute. So on average, it's going to last you 5 minutes. How long has the fire been going? Who knows? So the homes over here in this plat were probably built, what, roughly, I think my house, my neighbor told me, was built probably about 23 years ago. I can tell you my house is probably not up to code, just because I can go through in my bathroom, toggle a switch, and the lights go on and off. So if my house catches fire in the middle of the day, I'm not home. It may take 5 to 10 minutes for somebody to see my house is on fire. It takes their volunteer, which is not a bad idea. You know, a lot of small areas go off of that. There's nothing that I won't dog volunteer fire departments at all. So that's 10 minutes. That's probably more than room and content fire. I'm probably going to lose my house. Now my neighbor's house. Luckily these houses are brick, so they're going to burn a little bit slower because brick takes a little bit for it to reach its full combustibility. Now there's no fire hydrants. Now they're going to have to do shuttle. Go back and forth to get that. Closest hydrant's probably Sunset and Central. Not bad, if it's working. So what's the next closest one? Eagle Ridge. Hopefully those are working. If we had underground tanks, now granted, you're gonna have to refill them up somehow wherever you get it. But if we had those in the city, they would be a lot better.
I didn't know those were even an option. I didn't even know
Absolutely.
anything like that existed.
And they're even something to look forward to, even though I know that we're building new schools over here that could be added in. We did them in the school that we built because where I come from, we had a mixture of both kind of here. It was a fire department in the middle of a cornfield, or a city in the middle of a cornfield. So Lower Platts had fire hydrants that was supplied by a local city. Out farther up, rural area, farm country, we had to do dump tanks. So yeah, you can put them underground. They're fed just almost like what a main line would feed, except for it's off a tank. So when you open the fire hydrant, it sucks it up just like you would a regular fire hydrant, except for when you empty that tank, it has to be refilled. So, but what it can do, it still shows is there's a fire hydrant nearby. So one, the fire department has easy access to water. That's a big thing. I mean, 3 minutes can save not only a house, it can save a life. I've been in homes that I've had roofs fall on me, I've fallen through floors. It's a big safety concern, not only for the homeowner, but you know, for firefighters, especially volunteers. You know, I don't know about the fire department here. Some smaller departments honor 36-hour cards. And I'll tell you, most instructors where I come from, they straight tell their students when they go in there, I'm going to teach you enough to not get you killed. And that's it. Luckily, I had a level 2. That's 240 hours that I went through class, so I learned a lot. Some of these guys, luckily, have probably been around long enough that they've learned a lot from either guys that have come in or over the years. But it's just it's a major concern for me. You know, not only for me, my children, but my neighbors as well. You know, we put a lot of money into our homes. We like the city here. Obviously, I like it here. I come from a big city. You know, when I first moved here, I couldn't sleep for the first 2.5 weeks I was here. I didn't hear gunshots. I didn't hear, you know, cars flying by. I didn't hear sirens all the time. So it was adjustment for me.
I thought you was going to say the trains kept you up.
Well, that too, but now I'm used to it. So if I hear the train, I'm like, yep, it's that time. So I'm used to it now. But it is concerned that I pay a lot of money in taxes, and I really don't see where my money is being used. I mean, other than the main streets nice, the side streets don't look that well. I know we have a lot of traffic, and it is hard to keep roads nice with a lot of traffic. But when you only see patches here and there, and then the economical growth. In the last 4 years, I think I've seen 2 things go in here. Granted, we had a grocery store, it looks like, here at one time, and it's no longer here. I'll tell you, I don't like going to Franklin or Germantown and giving them my money when I'd rather keep it local.
We have tried very, very hard to get a grocery store back into the community, and we have not been successful. We have talked to many, many different chains. Personally, I have talked to at least 4. They look at rooftops and traffic counts. And then it's hard for them to compete with Walmart and Kroger's and some of those bigger chains that are so close to us. They just feel that it's,
Have we tried with modern, the way things are today, the way that we all use social media? Because I can probably say most of the council probably uses social media one way or other to stay with family. Doing something like, because there's things now that you can go on and you can put on social media, will just pop up on somebody's social media page like Facebook, where it asks them to do a survey. Hey, how many people would use the grocery store if it was here local? And they can take a survey, and that's something you could present to a small chain and say, look, we've done our legwork. Like, I know you may not see that we have foot traffic because we are a smaller town, but we've done the footwork for you to say, hey, look, we're a town of 5,000 people, and 5,000 of our people have said if we had a small chain here, they would rather shop here for their food than go to Walmart or go to IGA in Germantown, because we believe in the city that we have, and we want to keep it local. We don't want to economically support the city of Franklin. We don't want to economically support the city of Germantown. We want to keep it local. So we're saying if you bring your chain here, we're going to make sure that your doors stay open, because this is the city of Carlisle. We believe in the city of Carlisle, and we want to keep it local. Because we don't want to support the city of Franklin. We don't want to support them. We want to support it here. We want to see our money stay here in our city and grow our city larger. That, one, we can give maybe somebody here in our city a job, or give a teenager in our high school a job to show them, hey, look, this is what hard work can do. Because kids nowadays, unless you show them like, hey, this is what it can do, they think things can be handed out to them. And they didn't. Luckily, I come from a generation where my grandfather showed me what hard work was. Up until 3 years ago, I worked 2 jobs. So I know what hard work is. And it's paid off. And that's what I want my son to learn and my younger son to learn. It's like, hey, it's not going to be handed to you. Get out and get a job. And this is what you can get when you get that. But if we don't have nothing here local, sometimes parents can't be there to give their kid a ride all the way to Franklin or even farther. I travel almost 50 miles a day to go to work because there's nothing here. There's nothing here for me to do. I'm retired, but luckily I'm going to school so that I can do something else, which again, I'm probably going to have to go farther out for work. And that's probably for a lot of people here, because there's no factories. I'm not saying build a GM plant in Carlisle, Ohio, because obviously we're not big enough for that. But we have plenty of land that we could attract a small manufacturing company to come here and build and give somebody who may be down and out on their luck a job. Build a factory for 20 or 30 people. Maybe that's not a whole lot for a town of 5,000 people, but for 30 people that may be down and out who can't travel but could work, walk, ride a bike, that says a lot. But if we do some of the legwork, sometimes that works. To show somebody, hey, look, we're a small town, but we believe in the people of our town, and we want it to stay here. And this is what we can do for you. And I promise you, if we can, show them, this is what the people of Carlisle can do for you. We're a small community. One thing I like about this community is that during the summer when my son plays ball, my 7-year-old can walk around the field, and I don't have to worry about somebody snatching him up. That would never happen in the town I grew up in. You'd have to watch every move he makes, but not in Carlisle, because everybody knows everybody. I don't have to worry about if somebody hands my 7-year-old a candy bar. Do they do something with it? No, because this is Carlisle. It's a small town. That's what we bring to people. And if we do a little bit of legwork, it might be a little, extra 3 months worth of work, but is it worth it? Yeah, because Carlisle has something to give to somebody. And so do the people of this town. And that's what we need to show them.
okay.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you for coming tonight.
You're welcome, Joe.
Public forum is still open. If anyone else would like to address council. Seeing none, we'll close the public forum. We'll move on to council reports. Mr. Humphries, would you like to start off this evening?
One thing I'd like to do is I'd like to request to propose to postpone the reading of the second meeting of the ordinance 2518 from the agenda. My rhyme behind that is knowing that the charter says we shall have 2 meetings a month, and we're doubling up. I'd like to not have business in the second meeting due to there not being a separation of actual time between the meetings other than adjourning one and then opening up another one. So I'd like to hold off the second reading till January, if we could, please.
And just to clarify, the second reading he's referring to is scheduled for the meeting that's occurring immediately after the close of this meeting.
Is this just the acceptance of the streets and Eagle
Yes,
Ridge?
please.
So this first meeting, there is a scheduled first reading of that piece of legislation. Councilmember Humphries is referring to the planned second reading of the same legislation earmarked for the meeting that's following the conclusion of this one. Correct?
Correct, please.
It's up to council. Personally, I don't really see an issue with it, being that it's the acceptance of streets. It's not a contentious issue.
For me, I guess no matter what the actual ordinance is, obviously all ordinances are important. I just like to give the same value to any of them, would be my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does council have any comments? Whether they would like to act on this in the second meeting or postpone it?
Does this hinder getting the street into the city so that it can be taken care of for snowplowing and stuff like that before that?
Correct. Technically, we would not maintain the street until it belongs to us. The physical location of where this particular jog is, in reality, we would be still plowing it because it's not over by itself. It's a continuation of Sunset, but technically it would not be ours to maintain.
So currently, does the developer have a contract with us to do it?
No.
Okay, so he's doing it now, we're supposed to be.
Well, yes, but theoretically, but where it's physically located, the reality is we're taking care of it. To that, though, just to cover all bases, if the meeting were postponed, the second reading would occur on January the 8th, which would be the third reading would be January the 22nd. Without any emergency language, the city would not take ownership of the street until 30 days after that for the referendum period. So one idea I would pose to council is that if we wanted to delay, or council wanted to delay the second reading, to have emergency language added to the legislation, have 3 readings, but ask council to waive the 30 days, just going into snow months, it becomes ours to maintain for the residents in February. But that's just a proposition. Doing so would add emergency language. If not, technically there would be 30 days. The reality is we would do what is right for the citizens, irregardless.
That's fine.
Fine.
I don't mind delaying it. I mean, I think we should probably pass it without a wait period eventually, but.
I'm okay with doing that. I'd just like to get our citizens covered, I mean, we're going to accept the street regardless. It just pushes it out a little further.
If the language changes after the first reading, do you have to start back at the first reading?
No, we do not. It would still go on we would still present it, it would have
Effective.
emergency language in it, which allows council to waive the 30-day wait period, but you could still continue to have 3 readings.
Just in the
Do we need a
event.
motion or?
I would say as it's on the agenda on the second meeting, I would say that any
In the
move
second meeting.
or motion would occur
In that second.
in the second meeting when it comes up for discussion.
Anything else?
That'd be it, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Tankersley?
I just want to wish everyone a very happy holiday, Merry Christmas.
Okay.
That's all I have tonight.
Mr. McIntosh?
Just a couple items. Just a quick thank you to everyone that has nominated themselves or someone else for the decorating contest. We have over 20 entries, so that list will be coming out, and then we'll be doing the judging. I think it's this weekend into Monday. So that'll all be announced soon. So I do appreciate the involvement. of people getting involved in it. This should be fun. And I would like council to take a look at their January schedules and let's get a retreat on the books. I don't want to reinvent the wheel and introduce a whole lot of new things. So I would like to go back and revisit some things we didn't accomplish this year that we talked about. But I'm open to dates, times. You know, don't want to do it on a Saturday again. Don't, you know, any kind of. I think we should still have it, but I'm open to any changes to the format. So take a look at your calendars, and we'll hammer that out. Hopefully, maybe by email or by the first meeting in January. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McNeil?
Just also like to wish everyone a happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Being the season, a lot of people do like to have real trees for Christmas trees. Those could be very dangerous in the homes if they're not continuously watered properly. I do know that a dry tree catches on fire and can engulf the entire room very quickly. So just make sure that, one, you keep it watered, and then when you do dispose, make sure you dispose of it properly. And that is all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jewett?
I'll just say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone, and that's all I have this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lamb?
Couple things. Holiday decorating contest is going to be judged on the 16th. I recently was asked about a particular law, if it was in place or not, in Carlisle about hands-free technology while driving. So use of cell phones, texting, otherwise. I didn't know the answer. Talked to Julie about it through email a little bit. But it's something that I told them that I would look into, and I'm going to. So maybe at our next work session we can talk about some things and look at the ORC and see if ours is similar, up to date. The other thing, I found that as an entity we don't observe Veterans Day, as our employees aren't given the day off. I'd like to look at that also in a work session and see if we can get that changed possibly. Feel like it's a holiday. I mean, we had the speaker, we had the council and the mayor there, and the speaker was amazing. It's kind of contradictory. Our employees are working while we're at a event for Veterans Day. So maybe if we could take a look at that and see if we can get something changed. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. We'll close council report. We'll go move to mayor's report. I really don't have anything tonight, except I'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and happy holidays, and be safe if you travel. And that's about all I have this evening. Move on to manager's report.
Thank you. Just as we're getting into colder season, for those homes in Carlisle that have curbed streets where on-street parking is allowed, keep in mind that as you drive around the streets personally, sometimes it's a little challenging just to drive through all the parked cars. It's even more challenging for our safety vehicles, plow trucks, to get through. So just to remind people that if there's inclement weather planned, it would be helpful to our staff as well as the community to have you not park on the streets to make sure that those snow plows can get through. If they are not able to, and this has happened in the past, get through the street, they will not plow because they simply can't get through. So just be conscious of that, and it's a way of helping us to help you guys get in and out of your neighborhoods. And then wanted to officially announce that, and although most people probably assume they're closed, the restrooms at Roscoe Park are being winterized and closed for the season. Due to the unique weather this fall, we were able to extend how long they were kept open, but for those who utilize the parks and have gotten accustomed to their being opened, they are going to be officially closed. And that is all I have this evening.
Okay, thank you. Committee reports. We had a finance committee meeting this evening. Mr. McIntosh.
I'll give a quick overview. There are a few budgetary reappropriations or supplemental appropriations that will be read tonight. They're mainly just cleanup items that are all either a net zero or a net positive. It's not any negative impact to any of the funds versus what was budgeted for. A lot of it has to do with increased tax collection over what was budgeted for that needs moved to different funds and that kind of thing. But Mr. Rushing will be giving an overview during the first reading. That's it.
Okay, thank you. We have no old or new business tonight under first reading of ordinance and resolutions. Ordinance 2418, reappropriations, supplemental appropriations for current expenses, Amendment 2, and that is on for an emergency. And Mr. Rushing is ready to explain the emergency here.
That I am. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I am tonight's entertainment, so hopefully I'll keep this short. Presented for your consideration is our annual reappropriation, supplemental appropriation ordinance that Mr. McIntosh alluded to. Keeping to tradition and format, you will see in your packet a memorandum that I laid out the detailing of the necessity and why these changes need to be made to our budget, if you will. As Mr. McIntosh mentioned, many of these changes are reappropriations. So we are simply moving an appropriation from one expense account to another, which means it's a net zero increase to their overall budget. For the funds that do need additional appropriation, meaning more than what was budgeted for, I did outline in detail in the memorandum in your packet why that is needed. And I'll walk through that right now and explain those reasons. The general fund does need additional appropriation of $24,000. This is due to two items. The first being that is to our planning and zoning department. As you're probably aware, throughout town, our building and development in 2018 has been quite active. Obviously, the addition to eventually a new school campus building for Carlisle Schools, as well as additional section for Timber Ridge, the resurrection, if you will, of Waterbury development, and there's been several cases before the Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals. We do contract the City of Springboro for our building inspections, and we do contract CMT for professional engineering services. So as you can imagine, the cost of doing business, as we continue to grow, as we continue to add to our footprint of Carlisle, we also have the expenses of building inspections, making sure that the buildings are met to code and are stable, and obviously our engineering services, making sure that not only our code, but the floodplain and other federal guidelines are met. So that additional of the $20,000 is asked to get us through the year end for those services for our building and development. The second item for the general fund is additional $4,000 to the tax department. Good news is that income tax receipts have gone up through November of 2018 versus November of 2017. We have collected about 3% more in income tax, again, from the same period of 2017. As you can imagine, as we increase income tax receipts, the amount of refunds that we issue, whether it be someone or withheld or moving out of Carlisle or moving into Carlisle, different reasons for refunds, the dollar amount for refunds also increase. In addition to that, there's been a lot of changes, as you may recall, at the state level in terms of how municipalities are able to collect local income tax. Although we have the luxury of having home rule, we are creatures of the state, and by such, if the state can giveth, the state can taketh away. And the state does control by the legislature the ability of us to have an income tax. And the state has, throughout the year, has changed the rules and restrictions and how we can collect income tax, and therefore there have been some refunds that have been issued due to that. So that's reflected in that amount. Going to the second fund that needs additional appropriation, and this is when it's a positive that we're asking for additional appropriation, and that is the Eagle Ridge TIF Fund. As the fiscal officer for Carlisle, and as a common practice, when I budget for revenue, I budget conservatively, meaning that I use last 3 years' rough numbers and look at, if we froze in revenue, we're able to meet the expenses. And then, if throughout the year we see additional revenue, it just is carried forward in terms of the fund balance for the opening of the following year. As you see reflected there, it was budgeted that we would receive about over $226,000 for our Eagle Ridge development. We actually received over $305,000. So that's actually a 35% increase of budget estimates. Due to that, per the TIF agreement, our share to Carlisle Schools also goes up with that. As our revenue goes up, you can imagine as the share goes up, that's owed to the Carlisle Schools. So that's why the additional appropriation is needed for Eagle Ridge. Similarly, with Waterbury, the same story holds true. This is seeking additional $3,000 of appropriations. Again, this is due to the actual receipts the revenue estimates. We received about over 8% increase from what we budgeted in terms of revenue. So therefore, the share to Carlisle Schools also goes up with that. And that $3,000 is to cover that. And then additionally, the only other fund that needs additional monies, not reappropriations, but additional monies, is our Police Services Fund. This is the dedicated fund for just police. As you all know, Carlisle, we have a 1.5% income tax. A third of that, or 0.5%, is dedicated solely to police services, and that 0.5% goes into this fund solely. Similarly to that of the general fund, being that we collected more income tax, and a third of that money goes into the police services fund, any refunds, a third of the money is expense from the police fund as well. So that's reflected there. In addition, the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation changed their invoicing period. We have in the past paid premiums for our workers' comp in January for that coverage year. So for example, this January, we paid the premiums for the 2018 workers' comp in January. Well, they changed their invoicing cycle, so we were invoiced just last week in December for 2019. So we had 2 workers' comp premium payments in 18, one being for 18, and then one that was just paid for 2019. Obviously, this was not budgeted for, because again, historically, we made those payments in January for that coverage year, but again, due to out of our hands, they changed the invoicing cycle to the month before, so this is reflected in that. Again, our premiums is just over $25,000, and that's cost allocated by the funds that support personnel in terms of the actual expenses of personnel that come out of those funds. So the $5,000 in addition covers that. Besides those 4 funds, all the other funds that are reflected in the attached Excel spreadsheet for your viewing pleasure are just moving appropriations within the fund. That's due to, quite frankly, good management, but also, as we budget for a year, right now we are using a budget that was made over a year ago. It's hard to forecast what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone what's going to happen 12, 13, 14 months from now. So as the year progresses, different priorities change, programming, projects, just due to time and staff, and just quite frankly, as priorities change, there are some savings. So we're able to use those savings and move it to funds that may need additional appropriations. It is on as an emergency due to the fact that we have to close the books on a positive note by obviously passing it as an emergency. We have to have this in full force and effect by December 31, or else it would be an audit finding when we do our audit. And with that, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Looks like we're good.
I would like to continue, as we believe, your support, your thoroughness. There's really you leave us kind of speechless because you cover it all. And for that, I think you're doing a great job. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to suspend the rule requiring 3 readings, have 1 reading by title only, and declaring an emergency?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Bignell?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes.
An ordinance to make reappropriations, supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the municipality of Carlisle during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018, amending ordinance 1717 and 1318, amendment number 2, and is on as an emergency.
Any further discussion? Motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bignell?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Ordinance 2418 has been adopted. Ordinance 2518, accepting the dedication of streets in Eagle Ridge, Section 6, on for a first reading.
An ordinance accepting the dedication of streets in Eagle Ridge subdivision, Section 6.
Before you tonight is a piece of legislation for Eagle Ridge Section 6. Those of you who are familiar with the Eagle Ridge subdivision, this is the street that is basically from Deer Path to Wolf Creek on Sunset. So this basically makes a complete circle between Sunset, Wolf Creek, Eagle Ridge, and Deer Path. This section of development was originally proposed and discussed with Planning Commission, recorded by council back in 2016. The developer has made all the necessary improvements for the road. They meet our road standards. The village engineer and the service director have reviewed the road and agreed that they have met all the requirements, and we are prepared to accept the street as our own to maintain. To do that, it does require an act of legislation by council to officially adopt this section of roadway. It's presented for you as a first reading tonight.
Okay, thank you. We have no second or third readings, so we have no executive session. So we have a motion for adjournment.
You need to close this meeting. Yep, sorry.
Yeah, we're good.
I'm thinking of work session, sorry.
Yep.
Till the next one.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Bignell?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yay.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. We are adjourned.